learning that you are going to be a father, having to hold your child for the first time, what was the experience? And also, probably it happens at a time when you have assisted many women to give birth.
Yeah. I missed an opportunity of being there for my first-born son. And I think because of anxiety and a lot of things that have crept in at the time. But for the second and the third, I made sure that I'm present. I think even at present at birth, I didn't help. I was just there to support my wife in giving birth, and it was a very fulfilling moment.
Yeah,
you know, and just holding them and seeing them, you know, you'll realize that this thing is possible. You have given life, you know, to something that didn't really exist. They are there now, you know, and running around. You still appreciate them more when you see them grown up.
Sanibonani, igama ngubongani, and welcome to another episode of Men 360, a men lifestyle podcast where we dissect, we operate, and I'm using these funny words today because we are talking to a doctor. So we're here to, you know, ensure that the mindset, the body of a man is well equipped, you know, to function in society. We learn each other, we unlearn cultures, but most importantly, we leave a legacy in our families and in our society. Today we are joined for a conversation by Dr. Bandile Masuku. Some of you will know him from the hospital corridors, others will know him from government corridors, but I will allow him to introduce and tell us how he wants to be known, and we'll get to understand him and his journey in this life, personally, as an individual. But Masuku,
Sawona, and thanks for having us on your show.
Right now.
That's right.
No, thank you very much for making time. I know a man like yourself, somebody could be dating somewhere and you are called, which jump in speed and usondele to assist somebody give birth.
Yeah, at least for now, for this next 2 hours, I've asked someone to cover me, but there are patients in hospital waiting for me.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. And I think we don't take that for granted. We appreciate the time that you have given us. And we're hoping that we'll have a wholesome conversation. And maybe let's just quickly skabele mapalin and start with who is Bandile. Let's leave the title. Who's Bandile? Where are you born? You know, how has been the family set up? You know, and what kept you going growing up as a young man?
Yeah, I was born in Soweto.
I thought you'd say Kwatema, you know, but it's okay.
No, there are the Masuku Kwatema, but I was born in Soweto. Yeah. Both my parents met in the high school in Soweto. The same high school that I actually matriculated from is Kanuntwana, senior secondary in Snawane. And I grew up Kona, went to school, Skano, and then after matriculating, I went to Medunsa to pursue. First, I started with BSc, and then ended up doing medicine. Post-medicine, I then came back to Johannesburg to do internship, ended up doing gynae. So basically, I'm a township groomed young man. I call myself young because I feel young. But though glamalanga bang busy time.
Yeah, I was surprised also when I saw the age.
Yeah, it's quite so looks can be deceiving.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, I was born there, grew up there, did everything that township boys would have done, you know, particularly growing up in that era and that time.
And typically, what is a boy's life in Soweto? And I'm sure this is before democracy.
Yeah, before I went into politics, like joined politics through a student movement, a student organization called SOSCO. Basically, I was growing up, you know, like hanging out in the corners, trying out few things that some of them our parents would have frowned when we tried them out. But because I grew up in a somehow a good family, you know, both my parents were there, and they worked so much hard to get us where we were. So yeah, I think because I joined the struggle to free our people in 88, which I was like 13.
I was born.
Okay, you must call me uncle now.
Masuku.
Masuku, yeah.
Yeah.
So I joined at that time, and I was doing standard 7, and I then, because of that, then it shaped how I grew up, because it will be meetings, it will be organizing campaigns and actions, protest actions on campus, and also just reading a lot, you know. And at that time, I think our brain were quite absorbing. So I got also attracted to a lot of struggle poetry, which was one of the things that kept us going, to motivate and also give us some sense of encouragement and courage. You know, particularly the one that Zwakembuli poetry. There's a fellow from Sikukune called Sibata, Jingles Mahoti. So that's the poet that actually drew me and gave me courage to be in the struggle. So basically, it's not like a very known or common way of growing up, because being an activist meant a lot of things, and at that time we had a lot of limitations. Yeah.
And your participation into politics at that tender age, how then does it interface with your dad? Dad is home. Is he also participating in politics, or is a man who's on a 9-to-5, you know, minding his business? And how then does he feel with your early participation into? Because I would imagine, you know, people would be fetched in the wee hours of the morning. People would be, you know, beaten up. Families would be targeted from one political party to another.
Yeah, no, my dad was a very open-minded fellow, and he was a 9-to-5 guy, but he was quite clued up and conscious of what is happening, and he didn't really discourage me to be part of it. You know, I think the only worry was the safety and also how it will turn out, you know. Okay, there've been a couple of raids at home, you know, windows broken, doors broken, you know, the house turned upside down by police. But I think in the midst of everything, you know, he was an open fellow. I'm talking about him in the past tense, because he passed on exactly the same today, the 12th of April in 2008.
Yeah.
So it has been that journey. So he was a good fellow, quite knowledgeable, read a lot. You know, I think I've got more than 400 books that he had in his library, you know, so the collection is still there, and we still keep it, you know.
And you are a family of how many?
At home, from my dad's, we are 3. From my mom's, we are 3. I'm the middle and the only boy in my mom. So I've got an older sister, Unontlantla, who also was partly involved in a certain way. And then I've got a younger sister who is 10 years younger than me. We had another boy who came after me, but he didn't really usually make it. So April for us at home is a very somber month, because he also passed on. He was born in April and passed on in April, almost the same month. So Karabo, who is my last sister, like the last born, is Umpendulo to him, Ufezile.
Oh.
So we are basically a family of 4,
but
at the moment I'm the only
boy.
fellow.
Yeah. and you are done. You have survived, police brutality. You are now going to Medunsa. What is your mindset? What are you looking for? And your journey, including student politics, as you get to Medunsa?
You know, for me, I really wanted to be a doctor when I met my grandfather, the father to my father. He was one of the few first doctors who graduated at VETS, you know, in 1951 or 52 at that time. And so he worked extensively in KZN. So when we met him in early 80s, he inspired me, and I wanted to be I think, a doctor. You know, so subconsciously that was ingrained in me. So when I went to Medunsa, strangely is that when I went to Medunsa, I was told that I copied English. You know? So you know, at that time when you have copied, your results will be withheld.
Yes.
You know, and so we had to go back and forth to Pretoria in the DET, Department of Education and Training at that time, to get my results. So I went to Medunsa a bit late. It was the only institution that had actually accepted me. And I started with BSc. That was the reason. You know, after it was found that I didn't really copy, and the marks that were there are actually my marks.
That is clear, but we'll get there.
It's something else. That has been a journey of my life. That everything that I've been through have made me a better person.
Yeah.
And it just makes sure that I work hard, you know, and I work honestly, and being true to what I'm actually doing. So it's not something new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get elected to be the president of SASCO. What's the state of things in the country, student politics, and your journey having, I'm sure when people get elected, I've participated in politics, but also in church politics. I've worked in and climbed to being a president. I just want to understand your navigation. Yeah, because I always tell people that you might wake up and see somebody. Mpopalat was contesting, I think, the other day on the DA federal what, you know, and there were people who were having, you know, certain ways of, but why is she contesting? How did she get? I said, but people don't wake up in politics and try and occupy, you know, some position or contest for some position. They've had their own journey of navigating. So I just want us to briefly, you know, take a turn around that.
Yeah, when I was elected SASCO president, I was actually an elder at the time. You know, basically because I'd spent almost 8 years of my life in higher education institution, in Medunsa specifically. I did 3 years of BSc, and then I studied medicine. Then I had a 1 year of hiccup when I was a president of SRC, which I felt I had to repeat, but I don't regret it. It was a wonderful year. So when I was before I went to Medunsa, I was a secretary of COSAS in Soweto. Which is the highest that I went in COSAS. And when I went to Medunsa, I said, no, I want to be a member of SASCO, but I ended up joining. 95, I became an SRC member through SASCO. 96, I continued to be an SRC member, serving in a national body of SRC at a time called South African Universities SRC. I was their spokesperson. And then after that, I was elected to be president of the SRC 99, which we normally said was the year we shine 1999. So from there, I was just being a leader of the organization in the branch in Medunsa. In the province, I served as a deputy secretary of SASCO in Gauteng. And then after that, when there was a comrade of ours who passed on, was shot in one of the campuses in Eastern Cape, Kolane, and passed on. So comrade started the conversation, you know, as an elder at the time, to say that maybe it's time that in the generation that we are in, we help the student organization to consolidate, because it was almost 10 years of the existence of SASCO. And we are going through a lot of trials, of tribulations, losing elections there, you know, organizational weakness. So we had to bring some form of organization and consolidation of the organization. So that's how I became president. It was also very mad with the different controversies, but it came through, and I served 2 terms, first as an acting president and then secondly as an elected president.
Now you are done, you are going to the working world. When you leave university, what's the plan? Where do you think and feature yourself as far as family is concerned, work, your politics? What are you envisaging as now you are leaving university?
You know, because I was not really an attentive student, You know, I think our basic thing was to serve the organization. I had to travel the length and breadth of the country, going to different campuses. But in December, you know, most interestingly, you know, I'd do some community work at Bara for 2 years when I was doing fourth year and fifth year, and just to consolidate my knowledge. So when I left Medunsa, graduated in Medunsa, for me, the 2 years of internship and ComServe was just to consolidate my base knowledge, you know, to make sure that I'm able to become a good doctor and a knowledgeable doctor. And that's what I did, you know. And after that, I then also was bitten by a bug to become a gynae, because I worked in Natalspruit when it was still in Thokoza.
Thokoza, yes.
And I was inspired by a doctor there who was a gynecologist, Dr. Pidzwe. And ever since I knew, when I met him and spent time with him there in one of the winters I went there, I knew that I wanted to work with women and help women. You know, it's a very special thing, and I now had to go deep into it, the spirituality that comes with it, you know, the significance that it does to development, you know, and just basically, you know, that's where you know it all happened. But basically, the issue of the base knowledge was quite important. That's why I had to actually to do that post graduating.
And and what were your thoughts or your convictions around you taking up being a gynecologist? And you're a specialist, not even just a gynecologist, specialist. The elements of spirituality, how it contributes to the development of society. Just share your thoughts and your convictions around, as you were taking on the journey, to say, these are the spiritual elements around this. This is a passage of, you know, development to society. What were those thoughts?
You know, the surprisingly, all these issues that we are talking about now, spirituality and the role of women, it's things that I've learned in the quite not so short time, because you know, when you are in the space, you also have to understand it in depth. So in the last 4 or 5 years, you know, I had to then go into that space, you know, to understand deeper, you know, the role, so that I can be able to play it more significantly and more effectively, you know. And those thoughts is that, you know, women are the only humans that have got capacity to carry a life, you know, to bring something that is non-existent to existence, you know. So to bring something that it's an idea, because it's an idea, to reality, you know. And those are serious processes of life, you know. And I think appreciating that on its own is a very big thing. Yeah.
Look, Doc, for instance, in my book, when I share about my daughter's journey, and I don't think many, especially from black communities, we get to experience the birth of a child, you know. And for me, it's quite a very emotional experience. And I always say to people, probably how I relate with the mother of my child also comes from the respect that I gained more for her at that moment, because there are many pipes going in and out, amanzi, gazi, and so on. But also I realized that the process itself, it brings a woman to a crossroad between life and death, you know, and that at some point in time, either they would lose themselves, die, or the child could die, or they could both come out of it alive, you know. And I say to people, for me also, that gave me an opportunity to see women, but also my wife at that time, Mama Galoiso, to, in a different aspect, you know, of this grace that they carry when they give birth, you know. And that it also adds to the accolades of saying Gindot, whether in Xhosa or in Zulu or in Tsonga, you know, because of, as a man, you're expected to have kids, you know. So for me, that became a spiritual experience of having to watch a woman lay there, you know, trying to give birth to this life, you know. And I always say to people, probably if we would have a chance to share the same room with a woman who's giving birth, probably our attitudes as men could be different. I don't know, but that's my conviction. I don't know on your part if this would be sentiments that you share.
Yeah, no, it's true. And like I've said to you, these are things that I've grown and I've learned over time to really appreciate women, you know, as being spiritual beings, you know, gatekeepers of two realms that define our existence, you know, and I think as also being present during birth, you will see it live, you know, that it's not just an ordinary process, you know, of like making coffee or anything. You know, it's a very sacred, actually, process. And ancient history teaches us, particularly our pre-colonial history, that even our societies pre-colonial really respected women and really respected the process of giving birth. You know, it's not everyone who will tend to a woman who's giving birth. There will be special women, midwives, who are chosen by the community at that point to be the ones. But also, our ancestors knew that, you know, it is, like you said and accurately put it, that it's a matter of life and death. You know. So in definition and talk about pregnancy now in scientific terms, you know, it's a very, I normally say it's a minefield. You know, when you talk about limpet mines that are planted in a field, when you walk around, when a woman is pregnant, it's like walking in a minefield. You don't know whether you're going to step on a mine, which is a bomb, and explode, or you're going to have a good pregnancy. And with the number of people in the world, it means that the majority of pregnancies become, you know, successful, but there are those that don't become successful, and they also have got their own way of looking at them. But it is really a very spiritual, fulfilling journey. For some reason, you know that men, even after you gave your wife or your partner have given birth, no one knows until you tell them.
Yeah.
You know, but a woman, because they've seen them walking around with a big tummy, pregnant tummy, you know, and immediately when the tummy is not there, so the whole community will know that they've given birth, so they will congratulate them. But with men, even if it happened an hour or 30 minutes ago, you walk out of the delivery room, no one will tell.
Sure.
Except when you say it.
Announce it, yeah.
You know, say, Chief, man, take me seriously. I just had a boy or just had a girl.
Yeah.
So take me seriously. And I think that's another significant thing about it, that men have to say it.
Yes.
But women are appreciated without saying it.
Yeah. So your experience as a father, you are a father, learning that you are going to be a father, having to hold your child for the first time, what was the experience? And also, probably it happens at a time when you have assisted many women to give birth.
Yeah. I missed an opportunity of being there for my first-born son. I think because of anxiety and a lot of things that have crept in at the time. But for the second and the third, I made sure that I'm present. I think even at present at birth, I didn't help. I was just there to support my wife in giving birth, and it was a very fulfilling moment.
Yeah,
you know, and just holding them and seeing them, you know, you'll realize that this thing is possible. You have given life, you know, to something that didn't really exist. They are there now, you know, and running around. You still appreciate them more when you see them grown up.
Doc, what is your sense of family? What does family mean to you? You've grown up in a home where there's a mother and a father. Do you think that has influenced you to having to your posture in how you'd want to set up your own space and family?
Yeah, that's what I've tried to do, and I think that's what also the support that I have from my family, was also to try and set up that, of course, when we grow up, we start off and have hiccups. But I think after we found our footing and found what our destiny would be, I've settled in that mode, to have my kids, my wife. There was a talk that I must maybe go to national parliament, and one of the things that I say was that I really want to sleep next to my wife every day. and I think that's what it is. And like growing up in a family where there's almost everything was automated. In the morning they wake up, they drive together to work. Even if they didn't work for the same company, my father will drop my mom at home at work and pick her up every day. For 7 days a week, because they even work over weekends. That's how hectic they were. And that bond between the two of them, it's a bond that we all wish to have, with our partners. I think even my siblings will wish to have that bond. But you could see that these are people that grew up in broken or big families, but they tried to create a very good family and a good base for all of us. So I'm trying to mold, because it's not something perfect. We work on it every day. Yeah.
So you're a medical professional, you're a politician. Some people will say I'm a political animal. And then you're a family man. What's the order of priority? Are you a doctor first, followed by being a politician or an activist of the ANC, or an activist of the ANC? What are the three wives? If we can use the street lingo, the order of your wives.
I think the first one that would be, I don't see it as being a politician, because being it a career as it is now, being an MPL, it started off me being an activist, wanting to see change. So it could be that, the love to serve our people. So it becomes my first love, to serve the people. And my profession just adds on. It's just a commitment I've made. So the profession just adds on. And then, of course, you can't exist in isolation, so you need a very strong base, for you to execute all that to serve the people. So a family becomes important, and having a wife is quite critical. And having the wife that I have, for me, it has made things that I didn't see them possible to be possible. Even qualifying, writing exams to be a specialist. We call them college exams, but that's the College of Medicine of South Africa, where we write these exams. They become hectic. You get isolated and you need proper support, and she gave me that proper support. And I think what we have now, it's still going to grow. And I think so they're all equal, but in an order of logic. This is how I understand them.
Sure. Whilst on that, both of you and your wife are also activists of the ANC. And at which does that not bring a little bit of a disadvantage? Because politics are sick in their own nature. And it's only few couples we have seen in the ANC or in the life of the ANC who stood the test of time. Because I always say to people, I once said to one friend's wedding that, and I said to the wife, you must be glad that your husband didn't bring you to the fore of politics, because of when activists or comrades fight, the first place that they want to hurt each other is in their homes. They'll either take your partner, your wife, or drag your kids into this, but how have you guys managed to navigate, the landmines of politics You know, at some point you were MEC, but even before we arrived in government, you guys have served on different levels, where she serves in one region and you serve in an upper structure, or vice versa. How have you guys managed to navigate that space?
Yeah, I met her in in politics. I met her in the Congress of the Youth League, and I think that's where everything actually sparked. And I also understood that I'm going to be a boyfriend at the time to an activist. So we have learned a lot of things that we are mentioning on how comrades will want to get around, spread rumors and so on. And I think we've grown over time, you know, to understand, you know, the context and the realm that we are in, you know. So it's not like comrades have not tried, you know, to do all that, but I think we've become more solid and more a unit, you know. And I think the debacle that I went through as MEC made us more stronger and more united, because we then understood that not everyone in our lives has got the best of interest of us, and not everyone who says things to us are true. You know, so I think we are more strong as a couple now and as a family. We value each other. You know, I think when we went through depression together, and we didn't have anyone else but ourselves, you know, to give support, because remember, she was also drawn into the whole thing, and we had to fight it off, you know. And I think from that point of view, I think that was a good outcome. You know, we are more stronger, and I think the future challenges, I don't want to say battles, but the future challenges, they've got one thing coming. You know, we are pretty much a very solid union.
Look, I think maybe just to give context to anyone who would be watching and not acclimatized to political landscape, Dr. Bandile Masuku was an MEC of health, 2019, right?
2019 to
2019 to 2020.
Yeah, 2020 October.
Yes, and there was an issue or a question of PPEs, and then there was a question that he was meddling into the appointment of people who've got contracts and so on, and the wife at some point was drawn in that from another institution of government was having influence on appointing people, and all of those things became a challenge, and they were questioning your role that you are going to play in government, which ended up having the premier saying you must be released, or you released yourself. But I think legal processes, SIU came back and couldn't find anything on you, and also the processes in the ANC. So I was just trying to give context to anyone who might not be sure what is the challenge that we are talking about. Is that at some point in time, as an MEC sitting in a department that was overseeing, you know, the fight against COVID, those were some of the things that were raised against you. The details, I think people can just scroll through on the internet, and even the conclusion thereof, you know. But at the end of the day, you were exonerated by all processes, government and your political party.
Yeah, I think the most important thing, which was not really put out there, was that there was no any referral. You know, when the SIU makes a determination and makes a report, they are part of the conclusions is referral. So it's either they refer you to Hawks, you know, if you've got a criminal case to answer, and on this case, you know, they didn't find anything criminal. You know, the other parts that they said, oversight and all those are gray areas, which depending on how you look at it, I felt and very strongly, and I think even the laws of the country agrees, is that when you're an executive authority, you don't get involved in you don't get involved in administration. You only oversee, you know. And what I was accused of was not really true, and I think that is also in the court order papers that are out there. So basically, I was exonerated, but it's one of those challenges and periods of time that I feel grateful that they did happen. Personally, I think it made me grow and realize that life is not as easy as it seems, and not everyone who's around you is your friend, and they are on your corner. And I think most importantly that the family is an important thing. I think my siblings, besides my wife, my siblings, my close friends and cousins, I think they were with us all the way. And I think we are basically back to where we are, to serve the people in the best way that we know, in different capacities. It doesn't really have to be an MEC. I serve in the legislature, and I do a lot of community work. I do a lot of work as a doctor, and that's in actually serving, and I don't have to prove it to anyone.
Yes.
I do it as part of being me.
Doc, maybe let's start with this one. Was this informed by the political landscape? Relationships have got their own challenges, but you get, celebrities would get, external forces from the space that they operate in. You are a politician and activist, and your relationship, both of you are activists. Was this the biggest challenge, something that tested the strength of your relationship? Would you say this was the one, or there was another incident that came because of the political landscape, that it came as if it's threatening your relationship, but at the end of the day, in Teman Puma, you're like, but actually, whatever that they were trying, we're still here, we're standing. Actually, we can see for what you guys are standing for.
Yeah, no, I think they are, a couple, but I think we had a commitment that we made to each other that irrespective of what we go through, we need to understand that we have to go through it together. Yes, we do discuss, we do fight, on personal issues, on many things, but ultimately we come back to a conclusion that we need this, both of us, we need this union to actually to succeed. We also need this union as a base, because I don't think she will be where she is without a family and without this base. And I also actually think the same. And I think for our kids, it's something that is important too.
Have you guys supported different factions?
Yes, most of the time, like when.
And what's the principle for the house?
We keep it out. We'll have our differences. Like for an example, when we went to 2011 ANC Youth League conference, we are not in the same side. And even when we went to some of the provincial conferences of the ANC, we are not in the same side. But one thing for certain is that we do support each other.
Yeah.
Come what may, whether they belong to another faction or not, we do support each other. And I think that also makes a whole lot of difference, that we appreciate our differences and we accept them. But when it comes to us supporting each other and defending each other, it's quite important. And I will lay down anything that I have to defend her.
Yeah.
And I think she will also do the same.
I think one of the biggest challenges for any man is to lose employment. You could be seeing it in a different way because of an activist, and you see it not as employment, but having to serve. But when you had to be recused from your responsibilities, what was your thought of presenting this outcome to? Of course, maybe your wife might be understanding because she's in the same level and wavelength, but to your kids, to those who look up to you in your family, your nephews and nieces, how, because sometimes in my window they're thinking, I must go and tell my family, and that thing eats you up, So for you, what was the mindset of saying, how do I present this? Baba will no longer be waking up to report as an MEC, and of which, in the history of the Department of Health in Gauteng, I think many people would agree that you became, that point of reference when you talk about an MEC that must participate in health. You were driving health from the forefront. I think you introduced something around donating free hours outside of what you are paid for. You encourage the health sector to commit a couple of hours of community work. Maybe you'll explain it further. What was your understanding there? But let's start here. What is your thinking, and how do you then explain it to your own children, and how do you explain it to your nephews and nieces?
Yeah, remember we serve at the behest of, as an MEC, we serve at the behest of the Premier. And I think the Premier had taken a posture in the decision that I might not be quite useful in his cabinet at the time. And I had to explain it that way, that yes, it's a chance for another person to actually to serve. Of course, we won't sleep hungry because we're still going to be in the legislature, but this is how it works. People will always, particularly when you serve, you'll serve at their behest, and when they feel that you are not quite the right person for that, they will have to go for the person that they believe in. And I've tried to explain it that way, and so I tried to convince my family that it's not about being angry or anything, like my mother was the most affected in this thing, because it's almost a disappointment and also almost a failure. We failed before, I failed a course, I failed a year, but it was not that extensive than actually this one, because I also felt that there's still a lot that needs to be done in health, and I still think there should be a lot that needs to be done even now. And explaining it was from that point of view.
Yeah.
We were serving at the behest of someone, and the person felt that we are no longer the appropriate persons to be in that position, and they had to. But it's something that continuously you have to deal with all the time.
What would be? Please do also take us through the program where you mobilized, health sector employees to commit hours of service. If you just break it down for us, but also what would be the other programs that you came with that when you sit here today and anyone else who's got interest in the Department of Health would look at them and like, these were a turning point. They were a breath of fresh air. We might have underestimated the importance within, a department or in the sector. I'm sure as a politician, you would craft programs that you would want to be known and remembered for. And which ones stand out for you?
I think the main one is for the appreciation of the healthcare workers. We call it an EVP, it's like a value, EVP, it was value proposition. So appreciating the staff and the workers that are in the healthcare system in their respective positions, whether a cleaner, whether a porter, a doctor, a nurse, because I've worked in the public sector. I worked at Bara for almost 10 years of my life, and I really understood what it means to be appreciated, because the amount of work, the amount of effort that the nurses, the doctors, the porters, the cleaners put in are quite tremendous, So we really needed as a department to appreciate workers, connect with them, so that when you talk to them and you ask them to do something, they do it without questioning. Like you cannot be an army general with soldiers that are disgruntled.
Sure.
So for me, that was the most important thing that I needed, and I still think we need to continue doing. Connecting and appreciating even those workers who take extra effort. We had an old man who was working in Spokane doing gardening, and when you went to Spokane, you will see the garden and how the ground are kept. But we made sure that we recognize the effort, no matter how little the gesture was. But I think just to be appreciated was a good thing, you know. And for me, that was the biggest thing that needs to. You can't do anything in health if you don't have the, you know, the staff. So the low staff morale that was there, you know, that was my intention to make it higher, you know. And private sector came in, a whole lot of people came in, and I think we were going towards the right direction. And I think the incumbent should continue doing that.
And how did you convince people to take extra hours? I always tell people one of the bad things about a township school is teachers who are not willing to go beyond the call of time, whether it be sports or so. And public servants are just known for, we clock in at 8, we leave at 4:30. Tea time, they know when they're. So how did you manage to convince the army and the health to, you know, get into that motion of having to give their time?
Yeah, like the whole thing of appreciation, you know, just appreciating an extra effort. You know, when a patient will come and say, no, in the ward 33 at Bara, the treatment was quite good, you know. That on its own was part of the motivation, you know, because everyone would want to be known that they do take extra effort, you know. And secondly, I don't think that, you know, public servants sometimes are misunderstood. You know, there are those, of course, who don't really appreciate the work that they are doing and also putting extra effort. But I think we shouldn't generalize to a point where we paint everyone with one paint, you know, because there are teachers who go, for an example, who go an extra mile, you know, creative and so on. There are doctors who do the same, there are nurses. So I think just the level of appreciation will make everyone to be interested in what they're doing. Like for the police, for an example, everyone speaks negatively about police. You know, police take bribes, police do that, police are lazy, and all that. And they one video or two, then we generalize. But basically, if you go to any police station, you will realize these fellows work in difficult circumstances with no resources to a greater extent, and we expect them to fight crime. You know, so appreciation of what we have and the staff that we have goes a long way. And as a chairperson of community safety now in the legislature, I tell the general, the commissioner, General Mawela, that if you don't take care of the police, you are going to have a big fight with me. You know, and not that we are saying those who are lazy must be, you know, we should deal with them, but those that are putting effort must be appreciated. And
how did you win Dinosa? Because, you know, people have a perception that labor unions are a stumbling block to growth of the public sector, or, you know, championing, you know, progress within the public space. Did you find any resistance? How did you guys navigate each other?
I think the most important thing is just the understanding and the conversation we had between all the unions. You know, not only Denosa and Nehau, but all the unions. But the other thing is just the appreciation of their basic demands. You know, one of the things that we did effectively as when I was MEC was to absorb community healthcare workers. You know, these are a cohort of workers who are supposed, or who walk the streets of our townships every day, visit the sick, the old, give them medication, check them up if they are taking their medicines. And there were a cohort of healthcare workers who were not appreciated to a point where they were almost transient all the time, temporary, getting stipends, you know. And one of the biggest decisions that we took, of course, it was not without a fight, you know, we absorbed them to be permanent, because we want community healthcare workers to be a permanent cohort of healthcare workers.
Look, Doc, you occupied the media space in your tenure, short tenure. You were talk of the town on programs and your interventions. Even before COVID arrived, and COVID just made it worse, you know, where the efforts and the initiatives from your office were spoken of, and I think at some point even public would even say maybe the MEC must host its counterparts from other provinces. I think that's when we even saw an issue of wheelchairs in Eastern Cape. But I'm saying that you occupied the space as a political leader in the department, but also being an activist. Do you think that some of the work that you were doing with your team made you a target of political discourse? There is that rumor.
Yeah, it's different way of understanding it.
Yeah.
But remember, our space was to make sure that we also project a positive image of the department. Because when we came in, the department was also having a lot of negative reporting. And we needed to project the positive aspect of what the leadership in the department would be doing, and also what the department itself is doing. So, and of course we used our location as Gauteng.
Sure.
Because all the media houses are here, all the TV broadcasting stations are here. So we used it to advantage, not to say that my colleagues in other provinces are not doing. They're doing a whole lot of work, in Limpopo, in Mpumalanga, in Free State, and so on. But because of the advantage that we have, so we used Gauteng being the center to be to project. Is
it the center, or is it there was a story to tell?
There was a story to tell,
yeah.
But I think it also coincided. With the location. But I think there's a lot that we did, and that was the intention, to also change the perception, of the department, also change how people will perceive the healthcare workers themselves, and also, also people taking responsibility, But the most important thing was to also give the doctors and the nurses the opportunity to determine what the direction of the department would be. So we came with a saying that says we wanted a clinician-led, patient-centered, stakeholder-driven department. So we wanted everyone to get involved in the thinking and the projection of the good work of the department.
We were going to conclude very soon, and it's not the politicians in conclusion, because we know that there's a prelude to
another entrance.
Yeah. Do you think that perception that you guys were cleaning up and posturing and doing the actual work in the department, and how it was received by the public, do you think it also changed the perception of your colleagues in the political space?
I think I have a great respect now. People recognized something that maybe also myself I didn't see in my, that I'm capable of, because it was the first time being an MEC, and so I've learned every day of my life when I was there, doing things. If you remember well, after being sworn in as MEC, I had to go and deal with a situation in Mamelodi, where an elderly lady was handcuffed into a bench, and that, like, within 30 an hour or so, I was now dealing with a crisis, and what would become how we then have to respond to issues, being present, not to avoid, not to evade questions, but to take accountability of what is happening. And I think if you go to Mamelodi now, from the time that, including the appointment of the CEO, Dr. Su there, I can tell you that moment in my life as a MEC was one of the moments that I think put the department on the map, or that we can do something from something that is disorderly and create a very good and well-run actual facility. And Mamelodi, if you go now, you will see the difference.
Doc, given a chance to serve again in the behest of any political head, premier or president, what would be the things that you bring back, and what would be the things that you would discard from your experience?
I think now it will be more of course, now we'll have to be aware of how you do oversight on the administration, that they don't do wrong things or illegal things. But I think importantly for me is that if I go back to health, the most important thing is that we can't. One of the message that we need to get through is that to be healthy can't be the responsibility of government. But government can help you to become healthy. But for you to avoid to have cancer, for an example, to avoid you to have non-communicable diseases, government can't do anything about it, you know. But it's about how you take care of yourself. So it's just to bring and hand over the health to the people. So we must look forward to closing hospitals. You know, I make this all the time, that in Netherlands, because they're running short of prisoners, they're closing prisons. So we need to get to a mode where we work towards people taking care of themselves to a point where a hospital becomes obsolete. You know, something that maybe we need to try and work out in our mind how we can do it. Most of the things that we see are all preventable. And if some of them, if they are not preventable, if detected early, they can be cured, you know, and that's how I think we should be going around in health.
But somebody else might argue and say we might not win the battle because there's an economy that exists in us being unhealthy, or even doping us to not be healthy. I think somebody was talking about agriculture and some of these seeds that are used now and so on. Yeah. You know, so it's a fight worth waging. But somehow I think even people, when they talk about GBV, I think there's a report around the economy of GBV, why a fight would not totally be, you know, we can't collapse GBV because of there's an economy that exists somewhere that thrives on, you know. But I'm saying that I think it's something that is worth waging a war on. And I think with the opportunity that you have had, you even know how the pharmaceutical industry operates itself, you know. But because of time, Doc, I think I'll give you an opportunity just to give us your parting shots. Where to from here for you, as a father, as an activist? We see coalitions and so on happening left and right. I'm not sure if ANC will come back to power. But your parting shots, where to from here for you as Dr. Bandile Masuku, as a husband, as a father, to your kids, and as a son to your mother?
I think it would just to be as good as the best in the roles that I'm playing. You know, being a good father, being present, be a provider and supportive, being a good husband to my wife, also be her supporter, be a friend, and do everything possible to make her succeed. And as a doctor, you know, one of the things that I had resolved to do effectively this year is that I must not take this thing lightly. So I must focus, you know, on my skill and focus on my trade, and make sure that I become the best, you know, in everything that I'm doing as a doctor. And then as an activist, I think possibilities are endless, you know, but I'll continue to rally behind and do a lot of community work. One of the projects that we are working on now is to have free gynecological services, gynae services in the informal settlements and the peri-urban areas around the province. So we're working on it now, and hopefully our aim is to start and launch it around August, which is a good thing. I'm also involved in sanitary towel, stroke, menstrual health, hygiene aspects of things, just to make sure that we get green products out there, menstrual cups, and also some of the biodegradable sanitary towels. So that's the space that, so that, you know, actually there's a lot that is in the plate. That's why I'm saying, as an activist, you know, everything is there. You know, I just have to focus and we do them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doc, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
No
We don't take it for granted. And of course, I think we're going to extend this conversation on our part 2 to a father who is a first-time dad.